I've been thinking about something lately. The way we talk about doing hard things, like it's this massive, heroic effort, this constant battle against yourself. Push through, force it, grind it out. But what if that's the problem? What if the reason hard things feel so hard isn't because they're actually that difficult, but because of how we approach them? I used to think willpower was like a muscle. You flex it harder, you get stronger. Turns out that's not quite right. Your brain has patterns, pathways it's carved over years of small choices. Every time you pick up your phone instead of reading, every time you scroll instead of writing, every time you choose easy over hard, you're not weak, you're not broken, you're just trained to avoid discomfort, trained to seek the quickest dopamine hit, trained to think hard things are supposed to feel impossible. But here's what I've noticed. The people who seem to do hard things easily, they're not superhuman. They're not grinding through pain every day. They've just rewired something fundamental. They've changed the story their brain tells about hard things. And once you see how that works, everything shifts. So let me tell you what I mean. You wake up, first thought, check your phone. You tell yourself you'll just look for a minute, see if anything important happened while you slept. 30 minutes later, you're still scrolling. You didn't decide to spend 30 minutes. It just happened. You sit down to work, open your computer, but first just a quick check of email, then Slack, then that article someone shared. An hour passes, you haven't started the thing you sat down to do, and you feel heavy, frustrated, like you've already lost the day. This isn't about willpower. This is about wiring. Your brain has learned something without you realizing it. It's learned that the moment you feel any discomfort, any boredom, any resistance, there's an escape route, always. You're reading a difficult book, your mind starts to wander automatically, your hand reaches for your phone. You don't think about it, you just reach. You're having a hard conversation, there's tension. Your brain says, check that notification. You're trying to focus on work. It's challenging. Your brain says, maybe just see what's happening on social media. Thousands of times, small moments, small choices. Each time your brain learns hard thing equals escape. Discomfort equals distraction. Resistance equals relief. But here's the thing you don't notice. The relief is temporary, 2 minutes, maybe 5. But the resistance, that stays. Actually, it gets stronger because now your brain knows the moment things get difficult, there's a way out. So why would it ever choose to stay? You sit down to write. The blank page feels overwhelming. Your brain already knows. The phone is right there. You start a workout. It gets uncomfortable. Your brain already knows you can stop anytime. This is why hard things feel impossible. Not because they're actually impossible, but because your brain has been trained to see them as optional. Every time you give in to the easier choice, you're voting. Voting for the kind of person who avoids hard things. Voting for the neural pathway that says, when it's difficult, we leave. And your brain listens. Your brain learns. It becomes automatic. The tragedy isn't that you're weak. The tragedy is that you've accidentally taught yourself to be weak. One small choice at a time, one moment of avoiding discomfort at a time. But here's what gives me hope. If you can train yourself out of hard things, you can train yourself back into them. The same brain that learned to escape can learn to stay. The same neural pathways that carve the easy route can carve a different one. It's not about forcing yourself. It's not about grinding through with pure willpower. It's about changing what your brain expects, changing what feels normal. So what does that actually look like? Why does this happen? Not because you're weak, not because your phone is designed to trap you, though it is. but because you've trained yourself thousands of times. Small moments, small choices. Think about it this way. Your brain is always learning, always adapting, always looking for patterns. And the pattern you've accidentally taught it is simple. Discomfort equals escape, resistance equals relief, hard equals leave. But here's what's actually happening in those moments. When you feel that urge to check your phone, when you feel that pull to do something easier, that's not weakness. That's your brain doing exactly what you taught it to do. For years, maybe decades, you've been consistent. Every time something felt hard, you found a way out. Every time you felt bored, you found stimulation. Every time you felt uncomfortable, you found comfort. Your brain learned this human doesn't like difficult things. So I'll help them avoid difficult things. I'll make hard things feel impossible. And that's the cruel irony. The more you avoid hard things, the harder they become. Not because they actually get more difficult, but because your tolerance for discomfort shrinks. I used to think I was just naturally bad at focus, naturally bad at discipline. Some people had it, I didn't. But that wasn't true. I had just trained myself to expect immediate gratification. I had trained my brain to panic the moment things got challenging. When I would sit down to work on something difficult, my brain would flood me with reasons to stop. This is boring. This is too hard. You're not good at this. Maybe later. And I thought those thoughts were true. I thought they were objective assessments of reality, but they weren't. They were just my brain's learned response to discomfort. My brain trying to protect me from something it had learned was dangerous. Difficulty, boredom, effort. The problem is those things aren't actually dangerous. They're just uncomfortable. And somewhere along the way, you learned that uncomfortable and dangerous were the same thing. Your brain learned to treat every moment of resistance like an emergency. So when you sit down to do something hard, your nervous system activates fight or flight. Your brain starts generating every reason to leave, every excuse, every distraction. Not because the thing is actually threatening, but because your brain has been trained to see hard things as threats. And that's why willpower doesn't work. You're not fighting the hard thing. You're fighting your own alarm system. No, it's like trying to have a calm conversation while a fire alarm is going off. Even if you know there's no fire, your brain is screaming, "Get out." So what do you do about it? Here's the thing. You can't control the notification. You can't control the algorithm. You can't control what appears on your screen, but you can control if you open the app. You can control if you stay. You can control if you come back. That's your space. That's your control. I know that sounds simple, maybe even obvious, but most people spend their entire lives trying to control things they can't control, trying to make hard things easy, trying to make uncomfortable things comfortable, trying to change the world so they never have to change themselves. It doesn't work. The world will always give you hard things. Your brain will always prefer easy things. That tension, that's not a problem to solve. That's just life. But here's what you can do. You can change your relationship to that tension. Right now, when you feel resistance, your brain says, this is wrong. This shouldn't be this hard. I should feel motivated. I should want to do this. And when you don't feel motivated, you wait. You wait for inspiration. You wait for the perfect moment. You wait for it to feel easier. But what if that's backwards? What if the feeling of resistance isn't a signal to stop? What if it's just information, like feeling cold when you step outside? You don't think this is wrong, it shouldn't be cold. You just think, okay, it's cold. And you decide what to do about it. Resistance is the same. It's not good or bad. It's just there. Your brain saying, this feels hard, not this is impossible. Not, you should stop, just, this feels hard. And then you get to choose. Most people never realize they have this choice. They think feelings are commands. Brain says, this is boring. And they think, I guess I have to stop. Brain says, this is uncomfortable. And they think, I guess I have to leave. But feelings aren't commands. They're just weather. You can notice the weather without letting it decide your day. You can feel bored and keep working, and you can feel uncomfortable and stay present. You can feel unmotivated and still take action. This is the difference between people who do hard things and people who don't. It's not that they feel different, it's that they respond differently. They've learned to separate feeling from action. When they sit down to work and their brain says, this is boring, they don't argue with it. They don't try to make it not boring. They just think, okay, noted, and they keep working. When they start exercising and their body says, this is uncomfortable, they don't try to make it comfortable. They just think, yeah, that's exercise, and they keep moving. They've trained themselves to see resistance as normal, not as evidence they should stop, not as proof they're doing something wrong, just as the cost of doing something worthwhile. And here's what happens when you do this. When you stop treating resistance like an emergency, it stops feeling like an emergency. Your brain learns, oh, we can feel uncomfortable and be okay. We can feel bored and keep going. We can feel unmotivated and still act. The resistance doesn't go away, but your relationship to it changes. Instead of resistance meaning stop, it starts to mean this matters. Because easy things don't create resistance. Scrolling social media doesn't create resistance. Watching TV doesn't create resistance. Resistance is your brain's way of saying, this is different. This requires something from you. This is growth. And once you start seeing it that way, hard things become doable. Not easy. Never easy, but doable. You're not trying to eliminate the discomfort. You're just learning to be okay with it. You're learning to work with it instead of against it. Think of it like this. You're in a room with a fire alarm going off. Most people spend all their energy trying to turn off the alarm, trying to make the noise stop, getting frustrated when it keeps ringing. But what if instead you just acknowledged, okay, there's an alarm, it's loud, it's annoying, but I can still think, I can still move, I can still do what I came here to do. The alarm doesn't have to control you. Resistance is the same. It's just noise your brain makes when you do something that matters. You don't have to turn it off. You just have to stop letting it make your decisions. So when you sit down to do something hard and your brain starts its familiar song, this is boring, this is too difficult, you're not good at this, maybe later, you can just think, thanks for sharing, and keep going. Not fighting it, not arguing with it, just proceeding anyway. This is what people mean when they talk about discipline. It's not about feeling motivated all the time. It's about acting regardless of how you feel. It's the skill of doing things you don't want to do, not because you've forced yourself to want them, but because you've learned that wanting and doing are different things. You cannot want to exercise and still exercise. You can not want to work and still work. You cannot want to have a difficult conversation and still have it. Your feelings can be passengers. They don't have to be the driver. And the beautiful thing is, the more you practice this, the quieter the resistance becomes. Not because hard things get easier, but because you get stronger. Your tolerance for discomfort grows. What used to feel impossible starts to feel manageable. Your brain learns a new pattern. This human does hard things, even when they don't feel like it, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it would be easier to stop. And slowly, your brain stops trying to protect you from difficulty It stops treating every moment of effort like a crisis. Instead, it starts to help. It starts to see hard things as normal, as part of who you are. This is how you rewire your brain, not by forcing it, not by fighting it, but by consistently showing it a different way. One choice at a time, one moment of staying instead of leaving, one moment of acting despite feeling. Your brain is always watching, always learning, always adapting, and it will adapt to whatever you consistently show it. Show it that you run from discomfort. It will make discomfort feel unbearable. Show it that you can sit with discomfort. It will stop treating discomfort like danger. The choice is always yours. In every moment, not the choice of how to feel, but the choice of how to act. And that's all the control you need. So here's what I suggest. Not a rule, just a practice. Next time you feel the urge to check your phone, pause, just for 5 seconds. Not to fight the urge, not to make it go away, just to notice it. Feel where it sits in your body, the slight tension, the pull, the sense that you need to reach for something, and then choose. You can still pick up the phone if you want. This isn't about perfection, it's about awareness. But in that 5-second space, it's how you're practicing something powerful. You're practicing the gap between impulse and action. Most people don't know that gap exists. They feel the urge and immediately act. Feel bored, grab the phone, feel uncomfortable, find distraction, feel resistance, walk away. But there's always a moment, a tiny space between feeling and doing. And in that space, you have power. I know this sounds simple, maybe too simple. Your brain might be saying, this can't possibly work for me. My situation is different. My resistance is stronger. I used to think the same thing. I used to think I needed some massive intervention, some complete life overhaul, some perfect system that would finally make hard things easy. But that's not how brains work. Brains learn from repetition, small repetition, consistent repetition. Every time you pause instead of immediately reacting, you're teaching your brain something new. You're showing it that impulses don't have to become actions, that feelings don't have to become decisions. Start there, just the pause, 5 seconds, 10 if you can. Don't worry about what comes next. Don't worry about doing the hard thing perfectly. Don't worry about never checking your phone again. Just practice the space. Because here's what happens when you do this consistently. That space gets bigger. At first it feels tiny, almost non-existent. You feel the urge, you pause for a second, you probably still pick up the phone. That's fine, you're not trying to win, you're trying to learn. But over time, something shifts. The pause gets longer, the urge feels less urgent. You start to notice, I have a choice here. And sometimes you make a different choice. You feel the pull to check social media, you pause, and you think, actually, no, I'm going to keep working. Not because you forced yourself, not because you used massive willpower, but because in that space of awareness, you remembered what you actually wanted. This is the practice. It works for everything. You're about to avoid a difficult conversation, pause, notice the urge to delay, notice the discomfort, then choose. You're about to skip your workout, pause, notice the resistance, notice the story your brain is telling, then choose. You're about to quit something challenging, pause. Notice the impulse to escape. Notice what you're actually afraid of, then choose. Sometimes you'll still avoid the hard thing. Sometimes you'll still take the easy path. That's human. But sometimes you won't. And that's everything. Because your brain is always watching, always learning, Every time you pause, it learns we can feel impulses without acting on them. Every time you choose differently, it learns we can do hard things. Every time you stay present with discomfort, it learns discomfort isn't danger. And slowly, gradually, your default changes. Instead of your brain automatically reaching for escape, it starts to automatically reach for presence. Instead of resistance meaning stop, it starts to mean this matters. The hard things don't become easy, but you become stronger. And that's all you need. So that's the practice. Simple, not easy. 5 seconds of pause, noticing the space between feeling and action, remembering that you always have a choice. Start today. Start with the next urge you feel, the next moment of resistance, the next impulse to escape. Just pause, just notice, just choose, and your brain will learn. It always does. So that's control, not forcing, not fighting, just noticing and choosing. I know this might sound too simple. 5 seconds, a pause, awareness. Your brain might be saying that can't be enough. But here's what I've learned. The biggest changes come from the smallest practices. The most profound shifts happen in ordinary moments. You don't need to revolutionize your entire life today. You don't need to become a different person by tomorrow. You just need to notice the next impulse, feel the next moment of resistance, and pause. That's it. Your brain will do the rest. It's always learning, always adapting, always becoming what you consistently show it. Show it that you can sit with discomfort, and it will stop treating discomfort like danger. Show it that you can choose your actions, and it will stop making your feelings feel like commands. Hard things will still be hard, but you'll be different, stronger, more aware, more free. That's enough for today. Just notice, just pause, just choose. Everything else will follow. This morning you woke up. What was the first thing you did? Not after you got out of bed, not after you brushed your teeth. Before your eyes were fully open, your hand was already moving, reaching for your phone, and you scrolled through things that don't matter, from people you don't know, about problems that aren't yours. You've been awake for 30 seconds, and you've already given away your attention a dozen times. And this is every day, every single day, for years. You think that's normal. It's not normal. It's surrender. Because here's what that first choice costs you. It sets the pattern for everything that follows. You start the day as a reactor, not an actor. You wake up and immediately ask the world to entertain you, distract you, fill you. And the world is happy to oblige. By the time you finish breakfast, you've checked your phone 40 times. You don't even remember picking it up. It just happens. And the pattern continues. You're in the shower and you're already thinking about what you'll check when you get out. You're at a red light and 30 seconds feels unbearable. Your hand moves, the phone unlocks, you scroll through something, anything. You're in line at the store, 2 minutes of standing still, you can't do it. The phone comes out again. You sit down to work, and within 5 minutes, you've opened 7 tabs that have nothing to do with what you're supposed to be doing. You can't sit through a meal without checking notifications. You can't watch a show without scrolling through your phone at the same time. You can't have a conversation without glancing at your screen. You can't be alone with your own thoughts for 60 seconds without reaching for something to fill the space. And you know this, you know you're doing it, but you can't stop. Your attention gets pulled in 17 different directions before you finish your morning coffee. You order food the second you feel hungry because waiting feels impossible. You reach for your phone when you're bored, anxious, lonely, or just existing. You've trained yourself to be weak. And the cost of that weakness isn't just distraction, it's your entire life. Because here's what nobody tells you about divided attention. Every time you give in to the impulse, every time you choose the immediate over the important, you're not just losing focus, you're losing yourself. The person who could sit with discomfort, the person who could wait, the person who could choose, that person is disappearing, one notification at a time. Let me show you the math. You check your phone 144 times per day. That's once every 6 minutes. You're awake. Each check pulls you away from whatever you were doing for an average of 23 minutes before you can refocus completely. But you never get 23 minutes between checks. So you're never actually focused. You're always in a state of partial attention, partial presence, partial life. That's 16 hours a day of fractured consciousness, 365 days a year. For how many years now? How much of your life have you already lost to this? But that's just time. The real cost is deeper. Every time you reach for relief instead of sitting with discomfort, you're teaching your nervous system that you can't handle reality. Every time you scroll instead of thinking, you're atrophying your ability to process complex thoughts. Every time you order instead of waiting, you're reinforcing the belief that you have no self-control. You're not just wasting time. You're rewiring your brain to be incapable of anything difficult. And here's what that looks like in practice. You can't read a book for more than 10 minutes without getting restless. You can't have a conversation without checking your phone. You can't sit in silence without reaching for stimulation. You can't feel hungry without immediately ordering food. You can't feel bored without immediately scrolling. You can't feel uncertain without immediately Googling the answer. You've trained yourself out of every fundamental human capacity, the capacity to wait, to think, to be present, to be still, to be with yourself without needing entertainment. And the worst part, you think this is normal. You think everyone lives like this. They don't. Some people can still read for hours. Some people can sit with their thoughts. Some people can feel hungry and wait until dinner. Some people still have a functioning attention span. Some people still have self-control. Some people are still in control of their impulses instead of controlled by them. But not you. You gave that up, trade by trade, impulse by impulse, notification by notification, until your attention became a commodity owned by everyone except you. Your phone owns it, the apps own it, your cravings own it, your anxiety owns it. Everyone gets a piece except you. You get whatever's left over, which is usually nothing. And here's what nobody tells you about this process. It's not reversible by accident. It doesn't fix itself. Every day you don't actively rebuild your attention span, it gets worse. Every day you don't practice self-control, you get weaker. Every day you choose the easy option. The difficult options become more impossible. You're not staying the same, you're getting worse. And the gap between who you are now and who you could be is growing every single day. But here's the thing. So here's what I propose. And I know this works because this is how I started. Choose one impulse, just one. For me, it was reaching for my phone the second I felt bored. The plan is simple. When the impulse appears, wait 10 seconds. That's it. 10 seconds. Not 10 minutes, not an hour, not forever. 10 seconds. Here's exactly how it works. You feel the impulse to check your phone. Instead of checking it immediately, you pause. You count to 10 slowly. 1, 2, 3, all the way to 10. Then, if you still want to check it, you can. That's the whole system. I know you'll think this is too simple, that 10 seconds can't possibly fix years of weakness, but no, that's exactly the point. You know, you didn't get weak overnight. You got weak through thousands of tiny surrenders. Each time you gave in immediately, you made the muscle a little weaker. Now you rebuild it the same way, one small resistance at a time. The first week you'll fail more than you succeed. The impulse will appear, and you'll reach for the phone before you even remember to count. That's normal. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is awareness. Each time you catch yourself, after you've already acted, you're building the awareness muscle. Each time you remember to pause. Even if you only make it to 3 seconds, you're building the resistance muscle. Both of these matter. Week 2, something interesting happens. You start catching yourself mid-reach. Your hand is halfway to the phone, and you stop. You pull it back. You count to 10. This is when you know it's working. Week 3, you start feeling the impulse before you move. The urge appears in your mind, and instead of your body automatically responding, there's a gap, a space between the feeling and the action. That gap is freedom. And every time you choose to wait in that gap, the gap gets bigger. Here's what you do with the 10 seconds. Don't try to distract yourself. Don't think about something else. Don't fight the urge. Just sit with it. Feel the discomfort of wanting something and not getting it immediately. Notice that the discomfort isn't actually dangerous. It's just uncomfortable. Notice that you can feel uncomfortable and be okay. This is the most important part. You're not just building resistance to checking your phone. You're building tolerance for discomfort itself. And once you can sit with one kind of discomfort, you can sit with all kinds. The urge to order food when you're not hungry. The need to buy something you don't need. The impulse to quit when things get difficult. The compulsion to argue when someone disagrees with you. All of it becomes manageable once you learn that discomfort isn't an emergency. Start today, right now, the next time you feel any impulse to check your phone, to open an app, to order something, to reach for any kind of immediate relief from any uncomfortable feeling. Pause. Count to 10. Feel the discomfort of wanting and waiting. And then, if you still want to act, but give yourself those 10 seconds first. This isn't about becoming perfect. This isn't about never checking your phone again. This is about reclaiming the space between impulse and action. This is about remembering that you have a choice. This is about building the muscle that lets you choose. And here's what nobody tells you about this process. It gets easier, not because the impulses get weaker, but because you get stronger. The muscle grows, the capacity expands, the space between stimulus and response becomes a place you can live in instead of something you rush through. 10 seconds at a time. That's how you rebuild your freedom. That's how you take back control. One small moment of resistance, one conscious choice to wait, one decision to prove to yourself that you're stronger than your impulses. But here's the thing. I'm asking you a question, and I want you to really think about it. Who controls your impulses? You'll say it's technology, the apps, the algorithms, the notifications. You'll say it's designed to be addictive, that your brain wasn't built for this level of stimulation, that the corporations have weaponized psychology against you. You're right. I used to say the same thing. Blame the system, the design, the endless optimization for engagement, but that's not the problem. I know because I tried everything. Deleted the apps, bought a flip phone, moved to a cabin with no internet for 3 months, and nothing changed. The problem isn't that you can't resist technology. The problem is that you can't resist anything. Let me show you what I mean. You can't resist checking your phone, but you also can't resist ordering food the second you feel hungry. You can't resist buying something the moment you want it. You can't resist scrolling when you're bored. You can't resist getting angry when someone cuts you off in traffic. You can't resist anything that offers immediate relief from discomfort. It's not about the phone. It's about your relationship with discomfort itself. And here's what I realized after years of getting this wrong. There are only 2 things in this world. Things you can control and things you can't. That's it. The algorithm, you can't control it. The notifications, you can't control them. Your boss sending emails at midnight, can't control that. The traffic, the weather, what other people think, what happens in the news, can't control any of it. But your response to the notification, your choice to pick up the phone, your decision to scroll, your reaction to the discomfort of waiting, That's yours. That's the only thing that's ever been yours. And every time you give that away, every time you let the impulse decide instead of you, you're trading the only real freedom you have for 30 seconds of relief. I used to think freedom meant having everything I wanted available instantly. I was wrong. Freedom is not needing it instantly. Freedom is feeling the want and choosing whether to act on it or not. Freedom is being able to sit with discomfort without reaching for relief. That's what you've lost. Not your attention, your ability to choose. And the beautiful thing about choice, it's a muscle, which means you can rebuild it. Because in the end, this was never about your phone. It was never about the apps. It was never about the notifications. It was about something much simpler, much more fundamental. Your ability to feel discomfort and not act. Your ability to want something and choose to wait. Your ability to have an impulse and let it pass. That's what freedom actually is. Not having everything you want available instantly. No, that's not freedom. That's slavery to your impulses. Freedom is feeling the want and choosing whether to act on it or not. Freedom is the gap between stimulus and response. Freedom is 10 seconds of resistance when your entire body wants to move. And that gap, that space where choice lives, that's yours. No algorithm can take it, no app can steal it, no company can buy it. Only you can give it away. One impulse at a time, one surrender at a time, one moment of weakness at a time, or you can take it back 10 seconds at a time. The choice is yours. It always has been. And here's what nobody tells you about this process. It's not reversible by accident. The weakness you've built, the inability to sit with discomfort, the need for instant relief from every uncomfortable feeling, that doesn't just disappear one day. It compounds. Every time you reach for your phone when you feel bored, you're not just wasting 5 minutes, you're training your nervous system that boredom is dangerous, that it needs to be fixed immediately. Every time you order food, the second you feel hungry, you're not just being convenient. You're teaching your brain that waiting is unbearable, that discomfort must be eliminated instantly. Every time you scroll when you feel anxious, you're not just distracting yourself, you're reinforcing the belief that you can't handle your own emotions without external stimulation. And your brain learns fast. After a few thousand repetitions, it stops even asking if you want to resist. The impulse appears and you move automatically like a trained animal. But here's what I realized after years of thinking the problem was external. You can delete every app on your phone. You can throw the phone in a drawer. You can move to a cabin in the woods with no internet and nothing changes. I know this because I tried it. I spent months blaming the technology, the algorithms, the companies that designed these systems to be addictive, and I was right to blame them, but I was wrong about the solution. Because the problem isn't that you can't resist your phone. The problem is that you can't resist anything. You can't resist the urge to check your email when you're supposed to be working. You can't resist buying something when you see it on sale. You can't resist getting defensive when someone criticizes you. You can't resist eating when you're not hungry. You can't resist speaking when you should listen. You can't resist quitting when things get difficult. The phone is just the most visible symptom. The disease is deeper. You've lost the ability to choose your response to discomfort, any discomfort. And that means you've lost the only real freedom you ever had. Because here's what freedom actually is. It's not having everything you want available instantly. That's not freedom. That's slavery to your impulses. Freedom is feeling the want and choosing whether to act on it or not. Freedom is experiencing discomfort and deciding how to respond. Freedom is the gap between stimulus and response. And that gap, that space where choice lives, you've been systematically destroying it for years. Every instant gratification, every immediate relief, every automatic reaction, each one makes the gap smaller until there's no gap at all. Just stimulus and automatic response, like a machine, Let me show you how this works. Right now, wherever you are, sit still for 60 seconds. Don't check anything. Don't adjust anything. Don't move. Just sit. You can't do it, can you? Within 20 seconds, your body will start moving. Your mind will start racing. You'll feel the need to shift position or look at something or think about something else. That restlessness, that inability to be still, that's not normal human behavior. That's trained behavior. You've trained yourself to need constant stimulation. You've trained yourself out of the ability to simply exist without doing something about it. And if you can't sit still for 60 seconds, how can you sit with any difficult emotion for the time it takes to process it naturally? If you can't wait 60 seconds without stimulation, how can you wait for the right opportunity, the right moment, the right decision? If you can't be present for 1 minute, how can you be present for your life? The answer is you can't. And that's why everything feels so chaotic. It's not that life got more complicated. It's that you got less capable of handling complexity. You used to be able to think through problems. Now you Google the answer immediately. You used to be able to sit with uncertainty. Now you need to know everything right now. You used to be able to delay gratification. Now waiting feels like physical pain. You used to be able to be bored without needing entertainment. Now boredom feels like an emergency. You traded all of these capacities for convenience, and you got the convenience, but you lost yourself in the process. But here's the thing about human capacity. It's not fixed. Everything you've lost can be rebuilt. The ability to wait, the ability to think, the ability to sit with discomfort, the ability to choose your response instead of reacting automatically. All of it. Because what you call willpower, what you call self-control, what you call discipline, it's a muscle. And like any muscle, if you don't use it, it atrophies. But if you start using it again, it grows. I used to think discipline was punishment, that it was about forcing yourself to do things you didn't want to do. I was wrong. Discipline is freedom. It's the ability to do what you decide to do when you decide to do it, regardless of how you feel in the moment. It's the ability to keep promises to yourself. It's the ability to choose the long term over the short term. It's the ability to act instead of react. And that ability, that's trainable, not through massive effort, not through perfect behavior, through small, consistent resistance to impulse. Every time you feel an impulse and don't act on it immediately, you're strengthening that muscle. Every time you feel discomfort and don't reach for relief, you're building capacity. Every time you choose to wait instead of acting instantly, you're reclaiming the gap between stimulus and response. You're reclaiming your freedom. But it starts small, tiny, almost insignificant. The impulse to check your phone. And instead of checking it, you wait 10 seconds. The urge to order food, and instead of ordering, you wait 5 minutes. The need to Google something immediately. And instead of Googling, you think about it first. These aren't big changes. They're micro resistances, but they add up. Each one rebuilds a little bit of your capacity to choose. Each one strengthens your ability to tolerate discomfort. Each one expands the space between what happens to you and how you respond. And here's what nobody tells you about this process. It gets easier, not because the impulses get weaker, but because you get stronger. The muscle grows, the capacity expands, the freedom increases, until one day you realize something profound. You're no longer controlled by your impulses. You feel them, but you choose whether to act on them. You experience discomfort, but you decide how to respond to it. You face uncertainty, but you don't need to eliminate it immediately. You're present in your own life again. You're in control, not of everything that happens to you, but of the only thing that was ever really yours to control, your response. So Your thumb just moved without thinking, without deciding. It just moved. And now you're here watching this because that thumb found something that promised to make the next 30 minutes pass a little easier. But here's what I want to know. When was the last time you went 30 minutes without wanting something? Without needing a hit of dopamine from your phone, from food, from shopping, from anything that could fill that restless, gnawing feeling that sits in your chest? You can't remember, can you? Because every 15 minutes, maybe 20 if you're disciplined, something inside you starts reaching, wanting, needing, and you give it what it wants every single time. Your brain has learned that discomfort equals action. Boredom equals stimulation. Emptiness equals a filling. It's not your fault, but it is your problem because right now, in this moment, you couldn't sit in complete stillness for 10 minutes if your life depended on it. You couldn't resist the next urge, the next craving, the next impulse to make the feeling go away. Your ancestors could sit by a fire for hours, thinking, planning, just being. You can't sit through a red light without reaching for something. And every day, it gets worse. Every day, the gap between impulse and action gets smaller until there is no gap. Until you're not a person making choices, you're just a collection of reflexes responding to whatever stimulus appears next. The notification arrives, your hand moves, the boredom appears, you scroll, the hunger shows up, you order, the silence begins, you fill it. There's no pause anymore. No space between feeling and doing. No moment where you stop and ask yourself if this is what you actually want. It just happens. And the person you used to be, the one who could focus, who could wait, who could choose the hard thing over the easy thing, that person is disappearing, one thumb swipe at a time. But here's what nobody tells you. Every time you give in, you're not just losing that moment. You're losing something bigger. Let me show you the math. You check your phone 144 times a day. That's every 6.5 minutes you're awake. Each check takes about 23 seconds of focused attention, plus another 3 minutes to fully refocus on what you were doing before. That's 7.2 hours every day. Gone. Not to something important, not to something you chose, to an impulse you couldn't resist. That's 50 hours a week, 2,600 hours a year. Do you know what 20,600 hours is? It's a master's degree. It's fluency in 3 languages. It's a book that changes lives. It's a business that supports your family, but instead it's nothing because you couldn't wait 6.5 minutes. And that's just your phone. Add the impulse purchases you didn't need, the shows you binged instead of sleeping, the conversations you avoided because they felt uncomfortable, the projects you started and abandoned the moment they got difficult. How much did you spend last month on things you wanted for 30 seconds? 347, 891 to 200. Money that could have bought you freedom, time that could have built something lasting, energy that could have changed your life. But the real cost isn't the money. It's not even the time. The real cost is who you're becoming. Every time you choose the easy path, you're training yourself to be weak. Every time you give in to discomfort, you're teaching your brain that you can't handle difficulty. You're practicing being someone who quits, someone who can't stick to their word, someone who breaks promises to themselves, someone who says they want one thing but does another. And after years of this practice, that's exactly who you've become. Not because you're broken, not because you lack willpower, because you've been training for it. 15,000 repetitions of weakness, 15,000 moments where you could have chosen differently and didn't. You've built a perfect system for becoming exactly what you don't want to be. And here's what scares me most about what I'm seeing. You know this is happening. You feel it every day, the gap between who you want to be and who you actually are. the promises you make to yourself that you break before lunch, the goals you set that you abandon before they get hard. You know you're capable of more, but every day the evidence says otherwise. Every day your actions prove that you can't be trusted, that you can't resist, that you can't delay gratification for even 10 minutes. And that knowledge is eating you alive because deep down, you remember what it felt like to have control, to make a decision and stick to it, to want something and be willing to wait for it. But that person feels like a stranger now. And here's the thing. So I'm asking you, what exactly do you think is controlling your impulses? You'll say it's the apps, the notifications, the algorithms designed to hook you. You're right, but that's not the problem. I used to say the same thing. Blamed the technology, the companies, the system designed to capture attention. And I was wrong, not because those things aren't real. They are. They're designed by teams of neuroscientists specifically to bypass your conscious decision making. But that's not why you can't resist. Let me show you what I mean. Right now, turn off your phone. Not silent, off. Put it in another room. Sit with your thoughts for 10 minutes. You can't, can you? Not because of the notifications. There are none. Not because of the apps. They're not running. Because you can't sit with the discomfort of wanting something and not getting it. Because you've trained yourself for years to never experience the gap between desire and satisfaction. Every time you felt bored, you filled it. Every time you felt anxious, you distracted yourself. Every time you felt the urge to check, scroll, buy, consume, you did. And now your brain believes that wanting something and not getting it immediately is dangerous. So it screams at you to act, and you do every time. This isn't about willpower. This isn't about discipline. This is about a muscle you've never developed. The muscle that sits between impulse and action. The muscle that can feel a desire and not be controlled by it. The muscle that can experience discomfort without immediately reaching for relief. You've been destroying this muscle your entire adult life. And here's what scares me about what I see. You think the solution is to remove the temptation, delete the apps, block the websites, hide the credit cards. I tried that. It changed nothing. Because the problem isn't the stimulus. It's your response to it. And until you can sit with wanting something and choose not to act, you'll be controlled by every impulse that crosses your mind for the rest of your life. But that muscle exists. It's called your will. And you've been destroying it for years. Let me show you how. Every time you felt the urge to check your phone and you checked it, you trained your will to be weaker. Every time you wanted something and bought it immediately, you practiced giving in. Every time discomfort appeared and you reached for relief, you taught your brain that resistance is impossible. You've been doing reps, thousands of them, but you've been doing reps of weakness. I know this because I did the same thing. For years, I gave in to every impulse that crossed my mind, every notification, every craving, every moment of boredom got an immediate response. And slowly, without realizing it, I built a perfect system for being controlled by everything around me. The urge appeared and I acted. No gap, no choice, no pause between wanting and having. I was like a lab rat hitting a lever for pellets, and I didn't even know it was happening. Because here's what nobody tells you about willpower. It's not some mystical force you either have or you don't. It's a muscle. And like any muscle, if you use it, it gets stronger. If you don't, it atrophies. You've been letting it atrophy for so long, you've forgotten it exists. Think about it. When was the last time you wanted something and chose not to get it? Not because you couldn't afford it, not because someone stopped you, because you decided to want it instead of having it. When was the last time you felt uncomfortable and just sat with it without scrolling without buying, without distracting yourself with anything? When was the last time you made a promise to yourself and kept it when it got difficult? You can't remember because you haven't exercised that muscle in years. Every day you choose the path of least resistance. Every day you avoid discomfort. Every day you give your power away to whatever impulse feels strongest in the moment. And your will has gotten so weak, it can barely lift the weight of waiting 10 seconds. But here's what scares me most about what I see. You think the solution is to change your environment, block the websites, delete the apps, hide the credit cards, remove the temptations. I tried that. It didn't work because the problem isn't the stimulus, it's your response to it. You can delete every app on your phone and you'll still be controlled by the first uncomfortable feeling that comes up. You can block every website and you'll still reach for relief the moment boredom appears because you haven't built the muscle that can sit with wanting something and not get it. Let me give you an example. Right now, I want you to think about something you want to buy, something that's been sitting in your cart or something you've been thinking about getting. Feel that want. Now don't buy it, not because you can't afford it, not because someone told you not to, because you're choosing to practice wanting without having. How does that feel? Uncomfortable, isn't it? Your brain is probably already generating reasons why you should just buy it. It's not that expensive. I've been good lately. I deserve it. That discomfort you're feeling right now, that's the feeling of your will trying to work. It's weak. It's out of practice. It feels foreign, but it's there. And that's the muscle you need to rebuild. Not through some massive act of self-discipline, not by completely changing your life overnight, not by removing every temptation from your environment, by practicing small resistances over and over and over again. Because here's what I learned after years of giving in to every impulse. The gap between wanting and having is where your power lives. That space between the urge and the action, that's where you exist as a free person. When there's no gap, you're not making choices, you're just reacting. When the notification sounds and your hand immediately moves to check it, there's no gap. You're not choosing. You're responding like a machine. When you feel bored and instantly open an app, there's no gap. You're not deciding. You're just following programming. When you want something and immediately buy it, there's no gap. You're not free. You're just a consumer responding to stimulus. But when you can feel the urge and pause, when you can want something and choose to wait, when you can experience discomfort and not immediately reach for relief, that's when you're actually making choices. That's when you're free. And freedom isn't something you achieve once and then have forever. It's something you practice every single day in small moments, in tiny decisions, in the space between wanting and acting. I spent years believing that discipline was the enemy of freedom, that rules and restrictions made life smaller and less enjoyable. I was wrong. Discipline is what creates the space for freedom to exist. Without the ability to say no to impulses, you have no choice but to follow them. Without the strength to resist immediate gratification, you're a slave to every desire that crosses your mind. That's not freedom. That's just being controlled by different masters. So here's what you do. And I know this works because this is how I started. Choose one impulse. Just one. For me, it was reaching for my phone the second I felt bored. When that impulse appears, and it will appear, I want you to wait 10 seconds. That's it. 10 seconds. Not 10 minutes, not an hour. 10 seconds. Set a timer if you need to. Count in your head, whatever it takes. But when you feel that urge, to grab your phone, to check the app, to scroll, to buy something you don't need, pause and count to 10. I know you'll think this is too simple, that 10 seconds can't possibly matter, that the real problem is bigger than this tiny pause. You're wrong. Those 10 seconds are everything, because in those 10 seconds, you're not reacting, you're choosing. In those 10 seconds, you're rebuilding the muscle that sits between impulse and action. In those 10 seconds, you're practicing being free. The first week, you'll fail more than you succeed. I did. Your brain will generate every excuse in the book. It's just this once. I need to check something important. 10 seconds won't make a difference. Let it generate those thoughts. Then count to 10 anyway. Because here's what happens when you do this consistently. Week 1, you fail 7 times out of 10, but those 3 times you wait, you just prove to yourself that you can resist. Week 2, you fail 5 times out of 10. The muscle is getting stronger. Week 3, you fail 3 times out of 10. Now you're succeeding more than you're failing. Week 4, you can wait 10 seconds almost every time. And sometimes you realize you don't even want the thing anymore. That's when you increase it to 20 seconds, then 30, then a minute, then 5 minutes, but you don't start there. You start with 10 seconds, because 10 seconds is the difference between being a passenger in your life and being the driver. 10 seconds is the gap where your freedom lives. This isn't a trick. This isn't some life hack that will solve all your problems overnight. This is you rebuilding your will. One small resistance at a time. One 10-second pause at a time. One choice at a time. And here's what nobody tells you about building this muscle. It gets easier. Not because the impulses get weaker. They might actually get stronger at first, like a tantrum, when they realize you're not giving in anymore. It gets easier because you get stronger. Because every time you wait, you're proving to yourself that you can. Every time you pause, you're practicing being in control. Every time you choose the gap over the immediate reaction, you're becoming someone who can be trusted with their own life. Start today, right now. The next impulse that appears, whatever it is, wait 10 seconds. And tomorrow, do it again. And the day after that. Because in 30 days, when you can sit with any discomfort for as long as you choose, when you can feel any urge and decide whether or not to act on it, when you can want something and choose to want instead of having it, you'll remember what it feels like to be free.
Close your eyes if you can, or just soften your gaze. Let your shoulders drop a little. For the next 30 minutes, we're going to rewire something simple, but powerful. The way you think about purpose, the way you search for it, the way you create it. You don't need to do anything right now, just listen. Your brain will do the rest. I know you've been searching, looking for that thing that makes you feel alive, that reason to get up in the morning. But here's what's shifting tonight. Purpose isn't hiding somewhere waiting to be found. It's not a treasure hunt. It's not a mystery to solve. Purpose is something you build, something you create, something you decide. Your brain is already beginning to understand this. As you sit here, listening to these words, old patterns are softening, new ones are forming. You used to think purpose would find you, that it would arrive like a lightning bolt, clear and obvious. But that's changing now. With each breath you take, your mind is learning something new. You are becoming someone who creates their purpose, who builds meaning, who decides what matters. This is happening right now, not tomorrow, not when you figure it all out. Now, for the next 27 minutes, just rest in this knowing. Your brain is rewiring itself, creating new pathways, new possibilities. You don't have to search anymore. You just have to choose. You just have to build. You just have to create. And that process starts here, in this moment, in this breath. You've been carrying this feeling for a while now, this sense that something is missing, that other people have found their thing, their calling, their purpose. And you're still searching, still waiting, still looking for the sign. But notice what's happening right now. As you listen to these words, your brain is starting to see something different. The searching itself has become the pattern. The waiting has become the habit. The looking has become the loop. You wake up and think, what am I supposed to do with my life? You scroll through stories of people who seem to have it all figured out. You feel that familiar ache of not knowing. This is the old pattern, and it's so automatic, so familiar. You don't even notice it happening. But your mind is noticing it now, right here in this moment. The pattern is becoming visible. Every time you ask, what's my purpose? You're searching outside yourself. Every time you look for the answer in someone else's story, every time you wait for clarity to strike, you're reinforcing the belief that purpose comes from somewhere else, that it's not yours to make, that you have to find it, discover it, uncover it. But this pattern is changing. With each word you hear, with each breath you take, your brain is creating a new understanding. Purpose isn't something you stumble upon. It's something you decide. It's something you build, day by day, choice by choice. The person who helps their neighbor is creating purpose. The person who learns a new skill is creating purpose. The person who shows up for their family is creating purpose. It doesn't have to be grand. It doesn't have to change the world. It just has to matter to you. And that decision, that choosing, that's where your power lives. You are becoming someone who understands this, someone who sees the difference between searching and creating, between waiting and building. The old pattern of endless searching is weakening. The new pattern of purposeful creating is strengthening. With each moment that passes, your brain is rewiring this belief, this knowing, this truth. You don't need to find your purpose. You need to create it. You need to build it. You need to choose it. And that choice is always available, in every moment, in every breath, in every decision. This is what your mind is learning right now, not as information, but as a new way of being, a new way of seeing, a new way of living. The pattern has been observed, the shift has begun, the rewiring is happening. Right now, in this moment, you are changing. Why does this matter so much to you? This need to find your purpose, this ache for meaning. Let your mind rest with this question, not to answer it, just to feel it. Because somewhere along the way, you learned that life should have a grand design, a master plan, a destiny waiting to unfold. You learned that some people are chosen, called to something bigger, and maybe you're one of them, or maybe you're not. This belief lives deep in your mind, deeper than thoughts, in the place where stories about yourself are written. And that story says you're incomplete without a purpose, lost without a calling, wandering without direction. But notice how this story feels, how it sits in your chest, how it whispers in quiet moments. It feels heavy, urgent, like you're running out of time, like everyone else got the memo and you missed it. This urgency has been driving you, pushing you to search harder, look deeper, find the answer faster. But urgency is the enemy of creation. Panic is the enemy of purpose. When you're desperate to find something, you can't build anything. Your brain is understanding this now. the connection between the searching and the suffering, the link between the urgency and the emptiness. The more frantically you look for purpose, the more elusive it becomes. The harder you try to find meaning, the more meaningless everything feels. This is not your fault. This is just how the mind works. When you grasp at something, it slips away. When you chase something, it runs. But when you stop chasing, when you stop grasping, when you stop searching for purpose and start creating it, everything shifts. The pressure lifts. The urgency fades. The path becomes clear. Not because you found the answer, but because you realized you get to choose the answer. You get to write the story. You get to build the meaning. Right now, your mind is releasing that old urgency, that desperate need to find, that fear of being purposeless. Because you're not purposeless. You never were. You were just looking in the wrong direction. Purpose isn't out there waiting to be discovered. It's in here waiting to be created. In your choices, in your actions, in your daily decisions about what matters. The parent who shows up every day is living their purpose. The artist who creates for joy is living their purpose. The friend who listens deeply is living their purpose. None of them found their purpose. They all chose it. They all built it. They all created it. And you can too. Not someday when you figure it all out. Today, right now, in this moment. Your brain is absorbing this truth, not as an idea to think about, but as a new way to be, a new way to move through the world. The story that you need to find your purpose is fading. The story that you get to create your purpose is taking root with each breath, with each moment, with each word. You are becoming someone who builds meaning, who creates purpose, who chooses what matters. The searching can end, the building can begin, the creating can start. Right here, right now, in this breath, in this choice, in this moment. This is why it matters. Not because you need to find your purpose, but because you get to create it, and that changes everything. You've been told a story your whole life, a story about how purpose works, how meaning happens, how life unfolds. And that story says there's one perfect path for you, one calling, one destiny, one right answer to the question of what you should do with your life. This story lives in every movie you've watched, every book you've read, every conversation about following your dreams. The hero discovers their true calling. The artist finds their voice. The leader realizes their mission. It's always about finding, discovering, uncovering what was always there. But your brain is seeing something different now, something clearer, something truer. The story you've been told isn't wrong. It's just incomplete. Because while some people do feel called to something specific, most people don't. Most people create their meaning as they go. Most people build their purpose piece by piece. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing broken about that. There's nothing missing about that. The truth is simpler than the story, more accessible than the myth, more powerful than the promise. Purpose is not a destination you arrive at. It's a path you walk. It's not a treasure you find. It's a garden you tend. Every choice you make adds meaning. Every action you take builds purpose. Every moment you show up creates significance. Your brain is integrating this truth right now, not as information to remember, but as a new way of seeing, a new way of being. When you help someone, you're creating purpose. When you learn something new, you're creating purpose. When you love deeply, you're creating purpose. When you work with care, you're creating purpose. It doesn't matter what it is. It matters that you choose it. It matters that you commit to it. It matters that you show up for it. The mother who raises her children with intention is living a purposeful life. The teacher who shows up every day is living a purposeful life. The artist who creates from the heart is living a purposeful life. The friend who listens without judgment is living a purposeful life. None of them had to find their purpose. They all chose to create it. And you can too. Not when you figure out the grand plan. Not when you discover your calling. Not when the perfect opportunity appears. Today, in this moment, with whatever is in front of you, your brain is rewiring the old belief, the one that says purpose must be found, the one that says meaning comes from outside, the one that says you're lost without a clear calling. These beliefs are softening, dissolving, making space for something new. The understanding that purpose is always available, that meaning is always possible, that significance is always within reach. Because it's not dependent on finding the right thing. It's dependent on choosing to make anything
meaningful. The person who commits to their relationships is living purposefully. The person who shows up to their work with integrity is living purposefully. The person who treats strangers with kindness is living purposefully. Purpose isn't about what you do. It's about how you do it. It's about why you do it. It's about the intention you bring to it. This truth is settling into your mind right now, not as a concept to understand, but as a reality to live. You don't have to wait to live a meaningful life. You don't have to search to live a purposeful life. You just have to choose it. You just have to create it. You just have to build it. One day at a time, one choice at a time, one moment at a time. The pressure to find your one true purpose is lifting. The freedom to create multiple purposes is expanding. The power to build meaning wherever you are is awakening. This is the truth your mind is absorbing. This is the shift your brain is making. This is the rewiring that's happening. Right now, in this breath, in this moment. Purpose is not something you find. Purpose is something you create. Purpose is something you choose. Purpose is something you build. And you can start building it today. With whatever is in front of you. With whoever is around you. With whatever capacity you have. The searching can end. The creating can begin. Your brain knows this now. Your mind holds this truth. Your being carries this understanding. You are someone who creates purpose. You are someone who builds meaning. You are someone who chooses significance. This is who you are becoming. This is who you already are. This is the truth of your nature. Not someone who needs to find their way. Someone who gets to create their way. Not someone who's lost without a calling. Someone who's empowered to call themselves to whatever matters. The truth is simple. The truth is accessible. The truth is yours. Purpose is created, not found. Meaning is built, not discovered. Significance is chosen, not uncovered. And you have everything you need to begin. Right here, right now, in this moment, in this breath, in this choice. This is the truth, and the truth has set you free. Now let's explore what this actually looks like. This creating instead of searching, this building instead of finding. Your brain is ready to understand the how, the practical steps, the daily reality of creating purpose. It starts smaller than you think, simpler than you've been told, more accessible than you've believed. Tomorrow morning when you wake up,
you'll have a choice. You can ask, "What's my purpose?" and start the old searching pattern. Or you can ask, "What can I create today?" One question sends you looking outside yourself. The other brings you home to your own power. Creating purpose begins with tiny decisions. The decision to be fully present with your coffee. The decision to listen completely when someone speaks. The decision to do your work with care instead of rush. These aren't grand gestures. They're not life-changing moments. They're purpose-building moments. Your brain is learning this difference right now, between waiting for the big revelation and embracing the small creations. The person who chooses to make their morning routine sacred is creating purpose. The person who decides to treat their body with respect is creating purpose. The person who commits to learning something new each day is creating purpose. None of these require finding your calling. All of these create meaning immediately. Notice what happens in your mind when you think this way. Instead of, "I don't know what I'm supposed to do with my life," try, "What do I want to create with this day?" The shift is immediate. The energy changes. The possibility opens. Your brain is rewiring this pattern as you listen. From seeking to creating, from wondering to choosing, from waiting to building. Here's what this looks like in real time. You wake up, and instead of checking your phone immediately, you pause. You ask, "How do I want to show up today?" Not "What's my purpose?" but "How can I create meaning in the next hour?" Maybe you choose to make breakfast with full attention, to taste each bite, to notice the colors and textures, to be present with the simple act of nourishing yourself. That's purpose creation. That's meaning building. That's significance choosing. Or maybe you decide that today you'll listen to your partner differently, without planning your response, without checking your phone while they talk, with your whole being present to their words. That's not finding your life's purpose. That's creating purpose in your relationship. Your mind is absorbing these examples, not as things you should do, but as windows into a different way of being. The practice is always available, in every interaction, in every task, in every quiet moment. When you're at work, instead of thinking, "This isn't my calling," you can ask, "How can I create value here? How can I show up with integrity? How can I contribute something meaningful?" Not because it's your forever job, but because you're there right now. And right now is where purpose gets created. When you're stuck in traffic, instead of seeing wasted time, you can create purpose from patience, from breathing deeply, from sending kind thoughts to other drivers, from using the moment to simply be. Purpose creation happens in the spaces you used to think didn't matter, in the mundane moments you used to wish away, in the ordinary experiences you used to see as obstacles to your real life. Your brain is understanding this now, that there is no real life separate from this life, no meaningful moments separate from all moments, no purpose waiting somewhere else when you could be creating it right here. The practice is simple. Pause before acting. Choose your intention. Show up fully. Create meaning from what's in front of you. Not once a week. Not when you feel inspired. Every day. Multiple times a day. Moment by moment. This is how purpose gets built. Not in the finding of the one perfect thing, but in the choosing of intention over and over again. Your mind is rewiring itself to see this possibility, to feel this power, to know this truth. You don't have to wait until you figure out your life's work. You can create meaningful work from whatever you're doing. You don't have to wait until you find your passion. You can create passionate engagement with whatever is present. You don't have to wait until you discover your calling. You can call yourself to show up fully right where you are. This is the practice. This is the how. This is the way purpose actually gets created. One choice at a time, one moment at a time, one intention at a time. Your brain is making this shift right now, from seeker to creator, from waiter to builder, from searcher to chooser. The practice begins when you open your eyes, when you take your next breath, when you make your next choice. Not with a grand plan, but with a simple intention. To create meaning from whatever is here. To build purpose from whatever is present. To choose significance in whatever is now. This is how it works. This is how it's always worked. This is what your mind is learning, right here, right now, in this moment, in this breath, in this choice. The practice has begun. In these 30 minutes, something shifted. Your brain heard something new, something true. The old pattern of searching is weakening. The new pattern of creating is forming. You are different than you were 30 minutes ago. Not completely, but enough. Enough to begin. Enough to choose. Enough to build. Tomorrow when you wake up, you won't need to search for your purpose. You'll remember that you get to create it. In the first choice you make. In the first breath you take. In the first moment you show up. Purpose isn't hiding somewhere waiting to be found. It's right here waiting to be chosen. Your mind knows this now. Your brain has been rewired. The shift is complete. You can return to this knowing any time you want. Any time you forget. Any time the old searching pattern tries to return. Just close your eyes. Remember these words. Remember this truth. Purpose is created, not found. Meaning is built, not discovered. Significance is chosen, not uncovered. You are someone who creates. You are someone who builds. You are someone who chooses. This is who you are now. This is who you've always been. This is the truth of your nature. The searching can end. The creating has begun. Rest in this knowing, in this knowing.
Right now, in this moment, who's in control? You or the part of you that wants to check your phone? It's not you, is it? Because if it were you, you could put the phone down for the next 20 minutes and not think about it once. You could feel the impulse to check it and just not, but you can't. The impulse appears and your hand moves, the craving shows up and you act. The discomfort arrives and you reach for relief. It's automatic. It's instant. It's not even a decision anymore, which means you're not in control. The impulse is. And every day it gets stronger and you get weaker. Until one day you're just a passenger in your own life, watching yourself react to everything, unable to stop. And that day is closer than you think. And here's the thing, nobody wants to admit, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You felt it just now when I asked you to put the phone down, that little spike of anxiety, that immediate mental negotiation. Well, I need to check if, no, you don't need to check anything. You want to. Because somewhere along the way, you trained yourself to need constant stimulation, constant validation, constant escape from whatever you're feeling in this exact moment. You scroll when you're bored. You scroll when you're anxious. You scroll when you're happy, sad, tired, energized. The emotion doesn't matter anymore. The response is always the same. Reach for the device. Feed the machine. Give it your attention, your time, your ability to sit with yourself for more than 30 seconds. And the worst part, you think this is normal. You think everyone lives like this, jumping from notification to notification, from craving to satisfaction to craving again. Never present, never still, never actually dealing with whatever you're trying to avoid by scrolling in the first place. But what if I told you that the hardest things in your life, the things you keep putting off, the goals you keep failing to reach, could become easier than opening that app? What if resistance could become your default instead of avoidance? What if you could train yourself to move toward difficulty instead of away from it? That's not motivation talking. That's not positive thinking. That's understanding how your mind actually works and using that understanding to build something most people have completely lost: the ability to choose your response instead of being controlled by your impulses. And here's what nobody tells you about those 3 seconds, those meaningless, insignificant 3 seconds that you just spent checking your phone, scrolling past content you won't remember tomorrow. You think it cost you 3 seconds, but let me show you what it actually cost you. 3 seconds, 14 times a day, that's 42 seconds. Multiply that by 365 days, and you've given away 4 hours and 15 minutes of your life this year to nothing, to vapor, to the digital equivalent of staring at a wall. But that's not even the real cost. The real cost is that each of those 3-second decisions is a repetition, a practice session. You're training your brain rep by rep that when discomfort appears, you reach for relief. When boredom shows up, you reach for stimulation. When anxiety arrives, you reach for distraction. 42 seconds a day of training your weakness muscle, 4 hours a year of practicing avoidance, and your brain is learning. It's getting better at being weak, more efficient at escape, more automatic in its responses. So now when you sit down to do something important, something that requires sustained attention, something that might actually move your life forward, what happens? Your brain does exactly what you've trained it to do. It looks for the exit. It creates discomfort. It generates the urge to check, to scroll, to escape. And you wonder why you can't focus for 20 minutes on the thing you say you want most. You've spent 4 years practicing distraction and 20 minutes trying to practice focus. Which muscle do you think is stronger? But here's where it gets worse, because it's not just about attention. Every time you reach for that device when you feel uncomfortable, you're making a statement about who you are. You're declaring to yourself that you can't handle this moment without help, that you need external validation, external stimulation, external relief from your own mind. You're programming yourself to be weak, and weakness compounds. Today, you can't sit with boredom for 3 seconds. Next month, you can't sit with anxiety for 30 seconds. Next year, you can't sit with any difficult emotion at all without immediately medicating it with content, with food, with shopping, with whatever drug of choice your particular weakness craves. The 3 seconds becomes 3 minutes. The 3 minutes becomes 3 hours. Until your entire life is just a series of escapes from whatever you're feeling in the present moment. You want to know why you can't do hard things, because you've trained yourself thousands of times that discomfort means stop, that resistance means quit, that any internal friction is a problem to be solved by looking away. So when you try to build something, to create something, to stick with something that matters, the moment it gets uncomfortable, your trained response kicks in. Reach for relief, find the exit, avoid the feeling. And the hardest things in life, the things that actually change everything, require you to sit with discomfort, to stay present with difficulty, to keep going when every cell in your body wants to quit. But here's the thing, and here's what nobody tells you about this whole game. That strength you once had, I'm asking you to remember it for a moment. Not the fantasy version, the real one. You used to be able to sit in a waiting room without pulling out your phone. You used to finish books. You used to have conversations without checking notifications mid-sentence. You used to be bored sometimes, and you were okay with it. That wasn't discipline. That wasn't willpower. That was just normal. That was baseline human functioning. The ability to be present with your own mind for more than 60 seconds without needing external input. And I see what you're thinking. You're thinking the world changed, the technology got more addictive, the algorithms got smarter, the notifications got more persuasive, the apps got better at hijacking your attention. You're wrong. The world did change, but that's not why you can't focus anymore. That's not why you reach for your phone the moment you feel uncomfortable. That's not why you can't sit with difficult emotions for more than 3 seconds before medicating them with content. The reason you can't do hard things isn't because hard things got harder. It's because you got weaker. And you got weaker because every single day, multiple times a day, you practice being weak. You practice choosing the easy thing over the right thing. You practice avoiding discomfort instead of moving through it. You practice instant gratification instead of delayed reward. You practice distraction instead of attention. And now you want to know why you can't stick to your goals, why you can't build the business, why you can't have the difficult conversation, why you can't do the workout when you don't feel like it. It's not a mystery. You trained for the opposite. You spent years building the wrong muscle, and now you're trying to bench press with an atrophied chest and wondering why the bar won't move. But here's what I need you to understand, and here's why I'm talking to you right now instead of someone else. This isn't permanent. This isn't who you are. This is just what you've practiced. And anything you've practiced, you can practice differently. The same mechanism that made you weak can make you strong. The same repetition that built the wrong habits can build the right ones. The same attention that you gave to your phone, you can give to your purpose. But only if you're willing to see this clearly. Only if you stop blaming the algorithm and start training your response. Only if you understand that the problem isn't what you're exposed to. The problem is what you do when you're exposed to it. Because there are people right now in the same world with the same apps, the same notifications, the same algorithmic pressure, who can still choose their response, who can still sit with discomfort, who can still do hard things when they don't feel like it. The difference isn't their environment. The difference is their practice. The same mechanism that made you weak can make you strong. But first, you have to see clearly what actually happened, because what you think broke you isn't what broke you. What you think is the problem isn't the problem. And until you see this clearly, you'll keep fighting the wrong battle. You think the problem is the apps. You think the problem is the algorithm. You think the problem is that technology got too good at grabbing your attention. You think the problem is external. You're wrong. The apps didn't change you. The apps revealed you. They revealed that you never learned how to sit with discomfort. They revealed that you never developed the ability to be present with your own mind. They revealed that you never built the muscle that says no to impulse. The apps aren't the disease. The apps are the symptom. The disease is much older, much deeper, and much more fundamental. The disease is that somewhere along the way, you learned that comfort was the goal, that avoiding discomfort was intelligent, that any internal friction was a problem to be solved immediately. And once you believe that, once you made comfort your North Star, you became a slave to everything uncomfortable, because life is uncomfortable, growth is uncomfortable, building something meaningful is uncomfortable, having difficult conversations is uncomfortable, sticking to your commitments when you don't feel like it is uncomfortable. So if your default response to discomfort is escape, you've made yourself incapable of everything that matters. But here's what I need you to understand. This isn't a moral failing. This isn't about willpower. This isn't about being weak or strong. This is about training. This is about what you've practiced for the last 5 years, maybe 10, maybe your whole adult life. You've practiced one response to internal discomfort: escape, avoid, distract, numb, fix it with something external. You practiced this response when you were bored, so you scrolled. You practiced this response when you were anxious, so you checked your phone. You practiced this response when you were lonely, so you opened the app. You practiced this response when you were restless, so you ordered something you didn't need. Thousands of repetitions, tens of thousands, each repetition strengthening the neural pathway that says, when you feel uncomfortable, reach for relief. And now you wonder why you can't stick to your diet when you feel hungry. You wonder why you can't work on your business when you feel overwhelmed. You wonder why you can't have the difficult conversation when you feel anxious. You wonder why you can't exercise when you feel tired. It's not a mystery. You never trained the muscle that tolerates discomfort. You trained the opposite muscle, the muscle that runs from discomfort. And that muscle is now so strong, so automatic, so efficient that it activates before you even realize you're uncomfortable. You feel the first hint of boredom and your hand reaches for the phone. You feel the first wave of anxiety and you open the app. You feel the first moment of hunger and you order food. The discomfort doesn't even fully register before the escape mechanism kicks in. This is what I mean when I say you're not in control. The pattern is in control. The trained response is in control. The muscle memory of avoidance is in control. And the cruel irony is that every time you escape, you make the original discomfort stronger. Every time you avoid the feeling, you train your brain that the feeling is dangerous. Every time you run from anxiety, you teach yourself that you can't handle anxiety. Every time you distract yourself from boredom, you convince yourself that boredom is unbearable. So the discomfort grows and your tolerance shrinks until even the smallest internal friction sends you scrambling for relief. This is why you can't do hard things. Not because hard things got harder, but because you got less capable of handling the discomfort that comes with hard things. But here's the part that changes everything. Here's the part that nobody tells you about this whole system. The muscle works both ways. The same mechanism that trained you to be weak can train you to be strong. The same repetition that built the avoidance pattern can build the tolerance pattern. The same neural pathways that learn to run from discomfort can learn to sit with discomfort, but only if you understand what you're actually training. You're not training willpower. You're not training discipline. You're not training motivation. Those are outcomes. What you're actually training is the pause, the space between the impulse and the action, the moment where you feel the urge and you don't immediately act on it. That pause, that tiny gap, that fraction of a second where you notice the impulse but don't follow it, that's where all your power lives. That's where choice lives. That's where freedom lives. And right now, that gap doesn't exist for you. The impulse appears and you act. There's no pause. There's no choice. There's no conscious decision. It's automatic. But you can rebuild that gap. You can train that pause. You can strengthen that moment of choice. But only through practice, only through repetition, only by doing the thing that feels impossible right now. Sitting with the discomfort without escaping it. This doesn't mean you have to meditate for an hour. This doesn't mean you have to become a monk. This doesn't mean you have to eliminate all comfort from your life. This means you have to practice the pause, practice feeling the impulse and not following it. Practice sitting with boredom for 60 seconds instead of immediately reaching for stimulation. Practice feeling anxious and not immediately seeking relief. Practice being uncomfortable and not immediately making yourself comfortable. Start small, ridiculously small. Because right now, your tolerance for discomfort is so low that even 5 seconds feels impossible. So start with 5 seconds. Feel the urge to check your phone and wait 5 seconds before you do it. Feel bored and sit with it for 5 seconds before you distract yourself. Feel hungry between meals and sit with it for 5 seconds before you eat something. 5 seconds. That's it. That's the beginning of rebuilding the muscle you've lost. And here's what will happen. Those 5 seconds will feel eternal. They'll feel unbearable. Every cell in your body will be screaming for relief. Your brain will generate 1,000 reasons why you need to check the phone right now, why you need to eat something right now, why you can't possibly wait another second. That screaming, that resistance, that internal chaos you feel when you don't immediately satisfy the impulse, that's not a problem. That's the workout. That's the muscle getting stronger. That's you rebuilding the capacity you've lost. And after a week of 5-second pauses, try 10 seconds. After a week of 10 seconds, try 20. Not because 20 seconds is the goal, but because 20 seconds of voluntary discomfort trains you that you can handle voluntary discomfort. And once you know you can handle voluntary discomfort for 20 seconds, you start to believe you might be able to handle it for 2 minutes. And once you can handle it for 2 minutes, you start to believe you might be able to handle it for the length of time it takes to have the difficult conversation or stick to the workout or work on the project when you don't feel like it. You're not just training patience. You're not just training self-control. You're training the fundamental capacity that makes everything else possible. The capacity to choose your response instead of being controlled by your impulses. And when you can choose your response, when you can feel discomfort and not immediately escape it, when you can sit with anxiety and not immediately medicate it, when you can be bored and not immediately stimulate yourself, then you become capable of the things that actually matter. Because everything that matters requires you to act when you don't feel like acting. Everything meaningful requires you to continue when every impulse tells you to quit. Everything worthwhile requires you to sit with discomfort long enough to move through it instead of around it. This is the truth nobody wants to hear. The things that will change your life aren't complicated. They're just uncomfortable. And you've spent years training yourself to avoid anything uncomfortable. But you can train the opposite. You can rebuild what you've lost. You can become someone who moves toward difficulty instead of away from it. So here's what you do. And I know you're expecting some complex system, some elaborate plan with 12 steps and a tracking app and a reward structure. You're expecting me to tell you to meditate for an hour or eliminate all technology from your life or become some kind of digital monk. You're wrong again. What I'm about to give you is so simple, you'll think it can't possibly work. So ridiculously basic that your brain will immediately start generating reasons why you need something more sophisticated, something more complete, something that feels worthy of the problem you're trying to solve. But that's exactly the trap. You think because the problem feels overwhelming, that the solution has to be overwhelming. You think because you've failed at complicated systems before, you need an even more complicated system now. You think because other people seem to have their lives together with elaborate morning routines and productivity frameworks, you need something equally elaborate. The truth is simpler and harder than that. The solution isn't complex, it's just uncomfortable. And right now, your tolerance for discomfort is so low that even the simplest solution feels impossible. So we start with the absolute minimum, the smallest possible unit of resistance, the tiniest act of voluntary discomfort that you can actually do without your brain staging a complete revolt. Here's what I want you to do. And this is it. This is the entire method. Feel the impulse to check your phone and pause for 10 seconds before you do it. That's it. 10 seconds. Not 10 minutes. Not permanent elimination. Not digital detox. 10 seconds of sitting with the impulse before you satisfy it. 10 seconds of voluntary discomfort. 10 seconds of proving to yourself that you can choose your response instead of being controlled by your reaction. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking 10 seconds is nothing. You're thinking that's not going to solve anything. You're thinking, I don't understand the depth of your problem, the strength of your addiction, the complexity of your situation. You're missing the point entirely. Those 10 seconds aren't about solving anything. They're about training something. They're about rebuilding the muscle you've lost, the muscle that sits with discomfort, the muscle that chooses response over reaction, the muscle that says, I feel this impulse and I don't have to immediately act on it. Right now, that muscle is so weak, it can't handle even 5 seconds of discomfort. Your tolerance is so low that the moment you feel the urge to check your phone, you check your phone. The gap between impulse and action has collapsed completely. There's no pause, there's no choice, there's no conscious decision, but 10 seconds creates a gap. 10 seconds proves that impulses don't control you. 10 seconds demonstrates that you can feel something and not immediately do something about it. 10 seconds rebuilds the pause that you've lost. And here's what will happen in those 10 seconds. Your brain will lose its mind. It will generate 1,000 reasons why you need to check the phone right now. It will create anxiety about missing something important. It will make the discomfort feel unbearable. It will convince you that waiting is stupid, pointless, arbitrary. That's not a problem. That's the workout. That chaos you feel, that internal resistance, that screaming voice that says you can't wait another second, that's the weak muscle getting stronger. That's you rebuilding the capacity to choose your response. Start with your phone because that's where the pattern is strongest. That's where you've done the most repetitions of weakness. That's where the automatic response is most automatic. Every time you feel the urge to check it, pause for 10 seconds. Count them if you need to. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, all the way to 10. Then check it if you still want to. Most of the time, you'll still check it after 10 seconds. That's fine. That's not failure. That's training. You're not trying to eliminate the behavior. You're trying to make the behavior conscious instead of automatic. You're trying to rebuild the gap between impulse and action. You're trying to prove to yourself that you can sit with discomfort for 10 seconds without the world ending. Do this for a week. 1 week of 10-second pauses before checking your phone. And I promise you 2 things. First, it will be harder than you expect. 10 seconds will feel like 10 minutes. Your brain will fight you every single time. Second, by the end of the week, something will have changed. Not everything, not your whole life, but something fundamental. The gap will exist again. The pause will be real again. You'll remember what it feels like to choose your response instead of being controlled by your impulse. Then we expand it. 10 seconds before you eat when you're not actually hungry. 10 seconds before you open the shopping app when you're feeling restless. 10 seconds before you reach for the remote when you're bored. 10 seconds before you refresh your email when you're anxious. Same pattern, same 10 seconds. Same voluntary discomfort. Same rebuilding of the muscle that tolerates discomfort instead of immediately medicating it. This isn't a trick. This isn't a hack. This isn't a shortcut. This is training. Boring, repetitive, uncomfortable training, the same way you'd train any other muscle. You start with a weight you can actually handle. You do the repetitions. You stay consistent. You gradually increase the difficulty. The weight you can handle right now is 10 seconds. The repetition is every time you feel the impulse. The consistency is doing it every day, multiple times a day, without exception. The increased difficulty comes naturally as your tolerance grows. And here's what happens after a month of this practice. After 30 days of 10-second pauses, after hundreds of repetitions of voluntary discomfort, after rebuilding the muscle you thought you'd lost forever, you'll find that you can sit with other kinds of discomfort too. The discomfort of having a difficult conversation. The discomfort of starting the project you've been avoiding. The discomfort of sticking to your commitment when you don't feel like it. Because the muscle is the same. The capacity to sit with discomfort without immediately escaping it is the same capacity that lets you do hard things. The gap between impulse and action is the same gap where all your power to change lives. 10 seconds. Start today. Start right now. Feel the urge to do something other than what you're doing right now and wait 10 seconds before you do it. 10 seconds. That's all it takes to begin rebuilding what you've lost. 10 seconds to prove to yourself that impulses don't control you. 10 seconds to remember what it feels like to choose your response instead of being chosen by your reactions. 10 seconds might sound insignificant. It might sound like nothing compared to the mountain you think you need to climb. But those 10 seconds contain everything. They contain the gap between stimulus and response. They contain the pause where your power lives. They contain the space where freedom becomes possible. I'm not asking you to become someone else. I'm asking you to become who you were before you trained yourself to be weak, before you convinced yourself that comfort was the goal and discomfort was the enemy, before you gave away the capacity that every human being is born with, the capacity to sit with what is without immediately needing to change it. This isn't about phones. This isn't about technology. This isn't about the modern world being too much or too fast or too overwhelming. This is about you remembering something fundamental about what it means to be human, something you never actually lost, something you just stopped practicing. The same mechanism that made you weak can make you strong. The same attention you gave to your weakness, you can give to your strength. The same repetition that built the wrong muscle can build the right one. But only if you start. Only if you stop thinking about it and start doing it. Only if you take those 10 seconds today, right now, the next time you feel the impulse. 10 seconds. That's your practice. That's your power. That's your way back to yourself. Freedom isn't the absence of impulses. Freedom is feeling the impulse and choosing your response anyway.